Hello birders! In today's video, I'm going to tell you the difference between a field guide and a reference guide and which one might be the right guide for you. I'm Shayna Cossette and you're watching Shayna Cossette Birding. Guidebooks feature a collection of different bird species, usually grouped by either geographic region or by group of bird. These books contain species descriptions, range maps, as well as identification features and usually either illustrations or photographs of each species. In my opinion, all guides can be classified as a reference guide, but not all guides can be classified as a field guide. So what is the difference? Field guides are typically designed and written for referencing when you're out in the field. They're usually smaller in size so they can fit into your backpack or camera bag. And their focus is on the identification between species, not so much about the information on the species themselves. This means they consist mostly of photos and illustrations that highlight the different identification features and only contain a brief description about each species of bird. Some field guides are even designed with all of the pictures at the very front of the book for faster reference when you're out in the field trying to figure out what bird you're looking at. And field guides are most often based on a geographic region. Reference guides, on the other hand, are typically larger, denser, filled with a lot more information, and some of them are even the size of my university textbooks. Guides these large are not feasible for carrying around in the field with you unless they're somehow part of your workout plan. Reference guides are also much more likely to be focused in on a single group of birds, such as the warbler guide, the gull guide, or the shorebird guide. But there are also geographic-based reference books, like this Birds of Saskatchewan book. Reference guides are full of information, and they're much more of a deep dive into the information, key identification differences, ranges, and behavior of a specific group or area of birds. Now that you know what field guides and reference guides are, how do you know which one is right for you? The real answer is absolutely any and all of these guides can be correct. There really aren't any rules. I personally recommend that beginners start with a field guide. When you're first getting started, trying to learn over 200 plus different species of birds out there, just starting to figure out your ID features, it can be really overwhelming. So jumping into something like a 400-page book on warblers, many of which probably don't even show up in your area, might be a little intimidating. Instead of getting overwhelmed with all the new information, and if you do, it's okay, it happens, it's just take a breather, you don't have to learn all the birds right at the very beginning, I recommend a field guide that's based on your geographic region. If you're very, very new to birding and still not even sure if birding is a hobby you want to consider in, I would start very local. See if you can find either a province or state-based guide. These guides are small and they focus only on the birds that are going to be most common in your area, making it very easy for you to learn the birds that are actually likely to be around you. This will not only improve your confidence and identification skills, but it'll also keep you from getting too overwhelmed by being distracted by birds you might not actually see. If you're still new to birding, but you can already tell that you're a complete and total bird nerd, first of all, welcome to the club, then I would recommend getting the Sibley's 2nd edition, because this covers all of the birds you're likely to see in North America. And the reason why I recommend this if you think you're gonna stick with birding is because even though there are Eastern and Western based Sibley guides, as well as other companies that make Eastern and Western based guides, if you ever take a trip in the future or plan a birdcation to go bird in a different region, you would have to pick up the Western or Eastern book, and then you'd have to carry 2 books with you. This book is both the Eastern and Western book together in one. So you only have one book and all the birds you might possibly come across. At the beginning, this might make figuring out which one is your bird a little harder, but all of these do have your range maps, and so it can be pretty easy to filter out which ones are actually going to be in your area. While anybody can get a reference guide at any point in their birding journey, I do feel they are more suitable for intermediate to advanced birders. The exception to this, however, is these coffee style books. This Birds of Saskatchewan contains lovely pictures and tons of information, And so even though it is a reference guide and it's not practical for the field, I think this is a great book for beginner birders as well. Most reference guides focus on groups of birds that are very difficult or tricky to identify. Shorebirds being a huge example, same with gulls, same with warblers, hence those 3 guides. Because these groups are more difficult to identify quickly, they require more wording and more pages to describe the differences in their behavior, the differences in their variation in plumage and field markings, and it just takes more pages to be able to really soak in that information. Reference guides also contain a lot more writing than pictures typically. So you have to be pretty into birds to sit down and read a 400+ page book on just shorebirds. But don't let that stop you from picking up one of these guides. They are extremely informative, and if you are trying to expand your life list or improve your ID skills, they are a fantastic tool for birders. Now that you have an idea of the different types of guides that are out there, how do you choose which one is right for you? There are lots and lots and lots of different birding guides available in both the field and reference categories. If you've never owned a field guide before, I highly recommend going to either your local library or your local bookstore and looking at these books in person. Each guide is organized differently, and finding the one that's organized in the way that makes the most sense to you is going to be the best guide for you to use, because if it makes sense, you will actually pick it up and use it. For example, if you only bird with binoculars and you're not going to be taking any photos to reference later, one of these guides like this one from Audubon, where all of the photos are featured in the front and you have to later on flip to the back for more information, might make the most sense for you, because when you're actually out in the field looking at the bird, you can very quickly look at comparable species and figure out which one is yours. Me personally, when I bird, I take photos and usually end up referencing them later, but I also like to try to narrow down which kind of family or group of bird I'm looking at and then differentiate between individuals from there. So that is why I really like the Sibley guide, because it is categorized based on grouping of bird and then has all these similar ones side by side. There's absolutely no wrong way to identify birds, and just pick the one that works best for you. You also might not know which one you like until you're actually looking at it. You can find both reference guides and field guides at bookstores, thrift stores, garage sales, and your local library. If you are going to purchase a book new, consider purchasing through a local bookstore. My favorite bookstore is Manally Robertson. They have an in-person location in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and they also have online ordering, which is how I get all of my new guides, because I'm nowhere near the Saskatoon location. And they also offer very reasonable shipping across Canada. So if you're looking for a place to get new books, definitely recommend them. They are a small, locally owned company. I hope you figured out which field ID or reference guide is right for you. Let me know which ones you have, which ones you're hoping to get. And with that, thank you for watching. I will see you guys in the next one. Happy birding.